What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the always interesting Week 2 NFL Power Rankings, aka Overreaction Week. I'm going to try and do my best to parse through what we saw this weekend, what really matters, what I'm, either really excited about or maybe, not so worried about, and then, of course, what am I worried about from what we saw this weekend. Always a wide range of thoughts and opinions from Week 1, so it should be an interesting one to say the least. I know a lot of people want me to jump out and have these sweeping overreactions from Week 1. It's not always the case on this channel, but let's have some fun regardless. Before we do get started, if you could take just a second to hit that like button, it really does help. It takes just a second. And I also want to say, these are kind of my flashpoint reactions from the weekend. I will be having my full Week 1 recap show on the Fully Inflated Football podcast. I'm going to be posting Week 1 here on the main channel, but do make sure you're subscribed to the Fully Inflated YouTube channel or to the podcast feed wherever you get your podcast. That is the Fully Inflated Football Show. Excited to see all of you there to talk about all of these games a little bit more in depth. But let's go ahead and get started at the very bottom. And I hope you guys appreciate the new graphics this year. It's why the show is coming out a little later today. The goal is going to be bright and early on Tuesday mornings, but took a little extra time to get these graphics ready for the year. I think you guys are going to like them. But the Carolina Panthers at the very bottom. Man, talk about do I think what we saw Week 1 was real or not? Are we overreacting to Week 1? I really felt like the Panthers did enough to look like a competent NFL offense. I liked a lot of the moves they did, and I had them ranked all the way up at 30 heading into the year. But unfortunately, this seems to be a case of the more things change, the more things stay the same. Bryce Young still looked terrible. Only this year, he looked terrible with a completely melted butter style defense that was getting carved up left and right. And also, beyond that, this is the same team that the second they got anything going, they turned around and shot themselves in the foot, whether it's a holding call on a 3rd and 1, Jonathan Mingo fumbling, both of those happening the second they actually started to move the ball in the first half. And then, maybe, okay, they score, maybe they can wage a comeback. Nope, brutal, ugly pass interference call on a 3rd and long arm punt from Derek Carr. This team just lacks mental toughness. So much to figure out. And I'll end this by saying what I said on Twitter. This team feels like they're living in a simulation built by the devil himself. And until the Panthers can get past level 1, they're going to stay here at the very bottom. You could certainly argue they belong in a tier alone at the bottom. We'll see what next week looks like before we do that. But at number 31, the New York Giants. Things weren't much better for New York, man. And at least for the Panthers, you can hold on to that hope that just maybe Bryce Young figures things out in year 2 as the year goes on. For the Giants, it's like this team is just treading water. The hope was they were giving Daniel Jones enough weapons, better pass protection to actually get something out of him, and he just continued to be so milquetoast. Same old Daniel Jones, throwing the ball short of the sticks on 3rd down, not taking those chances, showing horrible pocket presence, stepping into sacks. It's just like Giants fans are already just evaluating the quarterbacks for next year's draft and hoping somebody emerges. And man, Brian Daboll has his hands full trying to, get this team somewhat back on track. But at least for the Washington Commanders, it wasn't as big of a disaster as those last 2 teams, so they're actually going to go up 1 spot in the power rankings. I still don't think very highly of them. For what it's worth, Jaden Daniels certainly looked better than Daniel Jones and Bryce Young. Not that he blew anybody away or anything like that, but this team, I don't think enough people realize just how depleted this roster is. And Dan Quinn definitely didn't come in overnight and, press a magic button and fix this defense. So they're going to just kind of be in evaluation mode all season long on Jaden Daniels, of course, but just with the different pockets of this roster, trying to figure out who are going to be the core players, hopefully for year 2. And that's very similar with our number 29 team, the Denver Broncos. Definitely a welcome to the NFL type of game for Bo Nix after the team started well, but They couldn't keep the gas down, and Bo Nix just way too many mistakes in this game. I'm not going to panic about it yet, but definitely not the start you wanted to see for Broncos fans. And then we got the Tennessee Titans at number 28. Look, this team has talented pieces, and they came out punching against the Chicago Bears. But two things. The offensive line that was a huge concern coming into the year looked horrible, and it wasn't just the pieces that you expect to be horrible. Peter Skoronski played maybe as bad as anybody on that O-line. And first-round pick J.C. Latham did look as bad as I feared. I called that the worst pick in the draft, given the stakes. Thought there were way better tackles that could have been taken there. Not saying that's locked in and we're, taking victory laps yet. But, God, he just doesn't look like he can move and be a left tackle in the NFL. Going to be interesting to see if Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach, can fix that over time. But then, of course, Will Levis. He has to prove that he's not Jameis Winston. He can make some beautiful throws, and he did against the Bears. But just completely gave that game away down the stretch. Has got to be more safe with the football and just less sporadic as a passer in general. And then how about those New England Patriots beating down on the Cincinnati Bengals? The Week 1 Bengals are and have been an anomaly for a long time, so it's hard to know exactly what to take away from this, but I will say the defense under Gerard Mayo did not skip a beat from where they left off last year. They looked awesome. Keon White looks like he's taking a huge leap in year 2, which is huge for this team after they traded away Matt Judon and lost Christian Barmore. It could be the exact thing they need to supplement those losses. And then, look, I thought Jacoby Brissett played his game. I keep saying this dude is somewhere around a top 25 quarterback in the league, and he definitely looked like that. Managed the game very well, and Ramondre Stevenson, an absolute monster. A big reason I was so pessimistic about the Patriots is the lack of dynamism on offense, and Ramondre Stevenson looked as good as any running back in the NFL, running with power and shiftiness and vision. We don't often talk about running backs providing that dynamism to these teams in the modern NFL, but that could be a big difference maker for this team. Then the Las Vegas Raiders, rounding out our bottom tier. I'm sorry, Raiders fans, but I'm out. I'm already out. I was kind of in the sense of I had this as, a 7-win, kind of scrappy, bully ball type of team. I'm sorry, but that decision to punt from Antonio Pierce is a fireable offense. And I don't love to call for people's jobs, but what is the point of bringing back the interim coach that rallied the locker room, that has this kind of rah-rah CEO, AFC's version of Dan Campbell is what they were trying to replicate. What is the freaking point of all of that if on 4th and 1, down by 6, with 6 minutes to play on your opponent's 40-yard line, if you're going to punt the ball? What type of message does that send to this locker room? And it's the type of thing that I think could lead to a downhill spiral for this team too. I like some parts of this team. They have a lot of talent on offense and a very good defensive line. And that still gets them ahead of all of these teams we already talked about. But I don't know how you forgive that if you're a Raiders fan, to start this season off this way. What is the damn point? You're here with Gardner Minshew in a year where a best case scenario is you win 8 games and you're too scared to get a yard against the Chargers defensive line. I'm out. Okay, now before we jump up a tier in these rankings, I want to let you guys know that today's power rankings are brought to you by Underdog. If you are looking to maximize your interest in any given football game or the complete football slate or MLB games, whatever it might be, their pick'em contests are the best way to do that. Small entries with a chance at massive payouts. You string together your lineups, picking player stats, higher or lower, anything from passing yards to interceptions to tackles, you name it. Last night, for example, the Jets game was well out of hand in the fourth quarter, but I had Garrett Wilson higher than 6 receptions, and with 1:37 to go, they had pulled Aaron Rodgers, but Tyrod Taylor hits Garrett Wilson to hit that 6 reception mark. That is exactly what I'm talking about with these pick'em slips, giving you a chance to win money, but also increasing your entertainment. Love, love, love pick'em. It is the best way to enjoy the NFL season. And right now, if you sign up using promo code TFG, they will give you a bonus match up to $1,000, and you will support my channel in the process. So scan that QR code on the screen or use promo code TFG at Underdog. Good luck, and let's get back to the power rankings. So at number 25, as we open up what will be a very large tier here of just the NFL middle class, these teams I think are separated by 2 or 3 points. A very large cluster here as we sort through the madness that is week 1. I think this tier will probably shrink over the next couple of weeks. But at 25, I have the Green Bay Packers, and a lot of people get mad when I do this. This is my process. If your quarterback goes down, especially if you're a team like the Packers that have a backup situation in flux, I'm going to drop you. If we're ranking these teams heading into week 2, you have to look at the Packers near the bottom of the league. Now, people are also going to get mad when they shoot back up the week Jordan Love comes back. They might be 1-3 or 0-4 and shoot back up into the top half of the league. I'm just telling you right now, that's probably what's going to happen. But for the week 2 Packers, they are really going to have to scrap together a game plan. I do trust Matt LaFleur to find a way to make that happen. It's not going to be easy. I'm a little disappointed that they haven't gone and brought in a Brett Huntley or a Ryan Tannehill. Maybe they still will. Seems like they're wasting time not doing that, because rolling forward with Malik Willis and Sean Clifford feels like you are damn near accepting defeat in what could be 3 really important games coming up. If they can steal one game here while Jordan Love recovers from the MCL injury, I think that could prove to be a very big deal into the final 3 quarters of the season. But yeah, they're going to have to count on the defense and kind of put together a weird game plan, running the ball, read options, screen game, that kind of stuff. And you know, hopefully Jeff Hafley's defense is prepared to step up. But then at number 24, I have the LA Chargers. I would say stage 1 of the John Harbaugh project is almost, you know, damn near complete, I would say. I mean, the idea that they're going to come in and be a physical team that can run the ball, they matched the Raiders in that department, who were trying to beat them in their own game, and they weren't able to do it. And J.K. Dobbins looks healthy. Hope he can stay healthy, because, gosh, he looks really freaking good. He looked as good as he ever has here for the Chargers, and the offensive line looks fantastic. You obviously have Herbert, so was impressed by the Chargers, but let's see how this looks probably into week 3, because they play the Panthers here week 2. Going to be tough to have too many big impressions when your 2 wins are Raiders and Panthers. But then the Saints at number 23. Saints fans are going to want me to come out and jump them up into the top half of the league, admit I was wrong on the Saints, and you know, there very well might be some time for that. And I loved what I saw, man. The run game looked great. The Clint Kubiak addition does look like something I may have been sleeping on for this team. They definitely had a cohesive game plan. They executed. I love seeing Tyreek Hill as this kind of super weapon. The defense was flying around. Looked like a good old Dennis Allen defense. Feel good vibes coming out of week 1. It was a home opener against the Panthers. Let's see how things look having to go to Dallas this week, and then we'll talk more about it next week. Then I've got the Arizona Cardinals at number 22. I mean, makes sense that they would maintain their spot in the power rankings when this is exactly the team I was projecting. Kyler Murray looked awesome, man. One of the best quarterback performances of the week. Granted, I can't really explain why they didn't throw the ball to Marvin Harrison, but hey, they were moving the ball even without him. This run game looked awesome. James Conner is a problem. But another problem is this defense, and this team is going to have to win seemingly every game, 33, 31, 34, 28, that type of stuff. And that is just a very dangerous world to live in. But this is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch every single week. And was definitely a little bit of an aha moment, at least to see Kyler start the season strong. Hopefully he can keep that up. Then we got the Bucs at number 21. Climbing up 2 spots, very similar to the Saints. I was lower on the Bucs coming into the year, had them number 23, kind of picked them to be one of last year's playoff teams that don't get back there this year. Bucs fans are going to want me to come out and say, I was dead wrong. This team should be in the top half of the league, yada, yada. Again, there very well may be a time for that in the damn near future. But beating the Commanders at home isn't going to move me too much. Now, I will say they definitely answered the offensive play calling questions. Things looked awesome from that regard, maybe even better. They found a way to really get Chris Godwin going in this offense, which is something I wanted to see even within last year's success season. But on the flip side, they are very beat up in the secondary as well. And that might be the difference between the Bucs and our next team here, the Chicago Bears. And the Bears are going to drop a spot here. Bears fans, it's not so much that I was underwhelmed by the Bears. It was more that I was impressed by a couple of other teams here that are going to pass the Bears. I think a lot of people are like freaking out that Caleb Williams didn't have this great week 1 performance. A couple things. Number one is the Bears clearly kind of put him out there with training wheels on. There's a lot of running, screen passes, saying, take care of the football. It's the Titans. We'll trust our defense. Let's kind of build this thing up brick by brick and not expose you to too much early on. And I would say Caleb executed the game plan. He had 2 bad plays. He overthrew Keenan Allen on what could have been a huge connection, and he took a really bad sack where he's going to have to learn what he can and cannot get away with in terms of his athleticism versus NFL pass rushers compared to Pac-12 pass rushers. But watching that game back, I didn't think Caleb was horrible. But ultimately what this comes down to is they are going to have to open things up. They're not going to be able to win every week with blocked punt touchdowns and Will Levis handing them touchdowns. But the other thing you got to realize is when the defense and the special teams does score touchdowns, that is limiting the amount of opportunities that Caleb Williams is given to show us what he can do, because the Bears are going to shelter up when they have the lead and he just doesn't have the ball. So it was a game that they had to win. They found an ugly way to do it. And again, them falling down one spot is much more because I was impressed by these other 2 teams that if you look back at my ratings from the Deep Dive series, the Bears and our next 2 teams were within a hair in terms of the rating, like the number rating I give all these teams. So very, very small margins here we're talking about. That's why we put these teams in tiers. But one of those teams that did impress me was the Seattle Seahawks. I was super worried out the gate, but they've kind of settled in a little bit with the offensive line. And for what it's worth, Charles Cross looks like he might have a monster season here. He played phenomenal. And if they can kind of count on that and then start to help everybody else out with that offensive line and get a right tackle back healthy, things could settle back in there. But man, the defense looked like a very much a success in game 1 of this Mike McDonald defense. They got Boye Mafe 9 pressures, some of them schemed up, some of them him winning. You love to see that, the secondary making plays. And these playmakers for Seattle, man, Kenneth Walker and Tyler Lockett, that one-handed catch at the end to put the game away, looking great. Geno doing his thing after an ugly interception to start the game. So, I think the Seahawks are heading in the right direction. A good win week 1. And then the Minnesota Vikings, man, we'll see what their ceiling is with Sam Darnold. We'll learn that as the season goes on. I like Sam Darnold. It was really fun to see him succeed in by far the most QB-friendly environment that he's ever played in. And he looked the part, man. He was getting through his reads, throwing with accuracy, made some really beautiful throws, took care of the football. How can you not like what you saw there? Brian Flores' defense looks much more complete than they were last year. More versatile, more adaptable, but still that kind of schematic craziness in there. Really like what I saw there. And Aaron Jones looking electric. We'll see if he can stay healthy as the season goes on, but man, that could be one of the value signings of the year. So this is an A-class organization, an extremely well-coached team with a lot of good players. They're going to be competitive in a lot of games, and as they showed, they can beat up on bad teams too. So I like what we saw from Minnesota. And then the Atlanta Falcons at number 17, they're going to drop down 4 spots. Definitely a team that I just want to see more from. Week 1 was certainly underwhelming, But there were positive takeaways as well. Like the defense under Raheem Morris played really hard. And I love the way they're going to lean into Bijan Robinson this year. And I think, the Steelers were a matchup that they were not going to let Bijan get those big plays, whether it was on dump downs or outside runs. That's a uniquely challenging matchup for the Falcons. Not every team is going to be able to stop those explosive plays from Bijan Robinson. Not to mention the Falcons just made some really ugly mistakes in this game. Penalties and turnovers and stuff. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom for Atlanta, but they definitely have got to figure some things out with the offensive line. Really, everybody not named Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom looked horrible. They couldn't block TJ Watt. And Kirk, I'm not going to have this full-scale panic with Kirk that a lot of people have had on the social media. But it's clearly not going to be just like plug and play, like this is the Vikings playbook and he's going to know exactly where to go with the football all the time. Like he had some bad reads, maybe trying to do some things within certain plays that he would do in Minnesota that weren't available to him here in Atlanta. So they are going to have some things to figure out. I don't think it was all bad. They were right in it in this game against our number 16 team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had just the most Pittsburgh Steelers win of all time. Just a boxer out there punching blows all throughout the game, mixing in a couple, sky hooks with those deep shots designed for Justin Fields. Very much a game plan where, they kind of put Justin Fields on the bunny slope, held his hand all the way down. And to Justin Fields' credit, he didn't fall. Did exactly what they asked of him. That's what people are going to want here is what's my Justin Fields take? I mean, they asked him to be a game manager, and he played like a game manager. I didn't see anything that really got me too excited about Fields, but I also didn't see anything that really had me worried that they can't win football games with him either. So this was much more about the game plan and the defense and the Steelers winning football games the way that they know how to win football games. I mean, really, Chris Boswell, 6 for 6, and then TJ Watt kind of leapfrogging the competition for Defensive Player of the Year out the gate here. Pittsburgh Steelers at 16 feels like a tale as old as time. Here we are again. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars at 15. Some pros and cons here. I mean, Trevor Lawrence looked phenomenal, and Brian Thomas Jr. looked phenomenal. And the defense in the first half of this game looked phenomenal until a Tyreek Hill backbreaker got to him. But also, just so much more of the same with this Jags team. You have the critical drop from Christian Kirk on a dime from Trevor Lawrence on a 3rd and long, takes a drive off the board. More just bad wide receiver play and high leverage moments hurting this team. And then really the lack of mental and physical toughness for this team to put a game away. You have the Travis Etienne fumble that is then followed up by this team trying to put this game away with a lead in the second half on the ground, and they were not able to do it. So you have to either toughen up, start to run the ball, which they haven't been able to do for 2 years in the Doug Peterson era, or wake up and find a way to use Trevor Lawrence to put these games away. It can't be what they tried to do. So a frustrating team where they've got the quarterback, they can throw the ball. Theoretically, they should be able to win some games this year. But can they close is going to be something to monitor as the year goes on. Then we got the Indianapolis Colts at 14, a +2. Win or lose, Anthony Richardson looks really freaking good. And if he can just rein in the accuracy a little bit, this is what we talked about in the deep dive on the Colts, was this dude is sporadic with his accuracy. He can drop absolute dimes, and he made one of the throws of the year, drifting back, getting hit, like 65 yards in the air. Just an absurd throw to Alec Pierce on top of a variety of incredible plays that Richardson made in this game to keep the Colts alive in this game. But he also left a lot of meat on the bones, missing some wide open deep shots to Adonai Mitchell. Good to see him getting open. They got to start connecting on some of those. But you now put this version of Anthony Richardson on top of what feels mostly like last year's Colts team with Shane Steichen, who's incredible. The defense definitely had their struggles against C.J. Stroud and company. That's going to happen. And I don't view this as some elite defense either way. But the Colts are in business, man. They're going to be a really fun team to watch this year. And then to round out this large NFL middle class tier, I have the Cleveland Browns. Get Deshaun Watson's ass all the way up out of here. Seriously, start Jameis. Another lawsuit comes in after he looks like that. Ownership's got to get out of here because you got to think everybody in that building is just done. I mean, he looked like a legitimate average to below average backup in this game. Like a guy that you pick up off the street that doesn't know the playbook, can't play on time, and was on the street because he has no arm talent and can't hit the broadside of the barn. You're wasting the season with this guy, and the contract is the contract. But one of my favorite professors in college instilled this in us. What's the first rule in the game of holes? Stop digging. You find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And the Browns need to stop digging with Deshaun Watson. And the more I talk about that, I'm almost questioning myself if I should have the Browns even lower. But then I circle back to, okay, but this is still an absurdly talented roster, a theoretically well-coached team, even though I'm questioning Kevin Stefanski more and more and more by the game. I do think they'll bounce back, but man, that was ugly. But let's jump up into our top 12, which is going to open up our next tier, which I'm just going to label as playoff contenders. And that's going to start at number 12 with the LA Rams. +3 in the power rankings, which puts them back to where they ranked in their original deep dive. I had them getting passed up by the Falcons after their additions. And then I had lowered them after the Ernest Jones trade really surprised me. I thought this defense was going to look egregiously terrible. And honestly, they impressed me. That's the main difference here. The Rams offense did what I know they're capable of, and that was with a just flurry of injuries to the offensive line. I've been trying to tell you guys, Matthew Stafford is playing the quarterback position arguably as good as anybody in the league right now, and I think Sunday night, he put that on display. That was an MVP type of performance by Matthew Stafford. And the fact that he didn't get to touch the ball in overtime continues to just be an absolute joke by the NFL. But again, outside of overtime, where the defense had clearly become gassed by that point, I thought that they really brought it against Detroit. Their kind of physical energy, the Shula, the defensive coordinator, things were working, I think, in many ways on the defensive side of the ball. Jared Verse played fantastic. And if the Rams defense can just be the 22nd best defense in the league and they can start to get healthy here moving forward, this is absolutely a team that can be in the mix in the NFC, especially with Stafford playing like that. Like, they're going to be in any given game when Stafford is able to, find these throwing windows and make these throws that you just don't see most quarterbacks in the league attempting and completing. But then at number 11, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals falling down 4 spots here, so kind of a half and half reaction. I bet there will be some power rankings out there that just say, I'm done with the Bengals, putting them in the 20s. I'm not there with them after week 1. Watching that game back, it was a weird, uninspiring performance, but not one that I'm particularly projecting to continue for the Bengals. No T. Higgins out there. And Jamar Chase played, but clearly wasn't a part of the game plan. And he was noticeably kind of avoiding contact, going down early. He contributed, but it wasn't the normal Jamar Chase. And then you throw in the fact that they had, back-to-back touchdown plays basically wiped with tight ends screwing up. Mike Gesicki looks like he makes a great touchdown catch and then couldn't hold on to it, secure the process to the ground. And then Hudson, the tight end, gets loose with the football and fumbles at the 1-yard line. Overall, it was just a very sloppy performance from the Bengals. It felt like they came in and said, all right, we need 4 more days to get Higgins and get Chase's contract. It's just the Patriots. We'll come in and take care of business, and our season really starts week 2 against the Chiefs. And they came out. They couldn't tackle, which is the other thing that's weird. This was a horrendous tackling performance. And even if that's an issue for the Bengals, I don't think it'll be that bad every week. And their game plan was just incredibly passive. Burrow was uncharacteristically just checking the ball down, throwing the ball short of the sticks, which unsurprisingly changed in the second half when they started to lose. it just felt like all of their week one demons came screaming back. So I'm not going to overreact. Definitely some concerns, though, most notably with the defense, because I do think the offense will figure things out. A lot of people are slamming Joe Burrow for this performance. That wasn't really my takeaway on this one. But then at number 10, the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know if I feel that differently about the Buffalo Bills. This was a pretty unsurprising outing where Josh Allen lit up the worst defense in the NFL in Arizona. It certainly wasn't the cleanest start either. And, some of my concerns for this defense, I think, can still hold up. But they definitely had a better outing than a lot of teams that I had ranked ahead of them. And that's going to see them getting a big old +4 here. Excited to see what they look like against the Dolphins. And I hope Josh Allen is fully healthy. I saw he had a hand injury to his non-throwing arm hand, so hopefully it doesn't impact them too much. And then at number 9, I have the Houston Texans getting a +1 this week. I would say they just kind of lived up to all of the preseason hype. Stroud looked phenomenal. Stephon Diggs kind of integrated into this offense very well. Nico Collins is just insane. Mossing dudes in double coverage down the field, having that mind meld chemistry with CJ Stroud. I was talking about this on Twitter where he has the same thing that Mahomes and Kelsey have together with Stroud and Nico Collins, where when the play breaks down, they just find that space and are constantly on the same page. There's a huge third down conversion where they did that in a big spot against the Colts. I will say the defense, not necessarily what you expected to see in year 2 with DeMeco Ryans' unit, but not too worried about it. I think you're feeling pretty good about the Texans moving forward. Then you got the Miami Dolphins at number 8. On one hand, the passing game wasn't really roaring. You didn't really have that Mike McDaniel innovation that he brings out. He's been doing that the last couple of years. This is something we talked about with them where I was like, maybe if you have that trick in your back pocket and you're Mike McDaniel, don't blow your load week 1. Because we saw that last year with some of the quick pre-snap motion, the way they were using Tyreek Hill last year. I do think teams caught on to that a little bit as the year went on. So it'll be something to monitor for them. Do they have some creative offensive wrinkles that they're kind of keeping in their back pocket a little bit more this year? Because it definitely didn't feel like the week 1 Dolphins that we've seen for the last couple of years. But a very mentally, physically tough win for this team. The defense bunkering down at the end of this game, finding a way to win a game that they haven't always historically won these kind of, close games down the stretch. So no movement for them, but in many ways that's a good thing when you're ranked as the number 8 team. Then the Dallas Cowboys are going to jump Miami, getting a +4. For all of the concerns on the Browns, the Cowboys also just looked really good. Dak gets his extension, both sides of the ball clicking. The offensive line played pretty well against a great pass rush. Definitely feel good vibes here week 1. And I don't think it's really going to surprise anybody if the Cowboys are regular season world beaters again. Could be another one of these years, though, where the narrative stays the same. It's okay, but then what happens in January? Definitely the second year in a row, though, where they've started extremely strong. And then this is the big controversial one. The Jets at number 6. I had them at number 5 heading into the year. And, everybody's going to come at me for this one. I understand. I understand what the pushback is going to be on this one. People are going to want me to come out and say, I was wrong. The Jets stink. They don't have it. And that very well might still happen. But there's been a complete lack of context, I think, with the discourse on the Jets. Number 1, that was a week 1 road game at the San Francisco 49ers on a night where they were on. And as we know, when the Niners are on, that is an absolute machine. But I think there's also a lack of context where people look at the Aaron Rodgers stat line where he had 171 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They're like, oh, he sucked. And it's okay, you didn't watch the game. They got dominated time of possession 2-1. And on the Jets' first 2 drives, the first one is slammed shut because Allen Lazard dropped a wide open pass on 3rd down, which is the equivalent of a turnover. And the second drive was stopped immediately because Bryce Hall fumbled. And then the interception, let's face it, was just a bad beat, unlucky interception. Like, was it a contested window that Rodgers tried to throw it into? Yes, but that's not a pass that, if you're projecting things forward, was a bad, horrible throw from Aaron Rodgers that you expect to result in an interception that kills a drive short. And that's not just me saying that. I tweeted it out. I was like, turnover-worthy play for Rodgers, and everybody pretty much agreed, like, no, that's not a turnover-worthy play. PFF comes out the next day, not a turnover-worthy play. So if you actually watch the tape, you actually feel really good about how the Jets' offense looked. The offensive line played great against an awesome Niners pass rush. The Rodgers connection with Garrett Wilson was electric. And outside of, yes, one inaccurate pass on a fourth down slant, Rodgers was otherwise money. And I said this last night in my Discord server. I was like, people are going to be really mad when Aaron Rodgers comes out and is one of the top graded quarterbacks per PFF from week 1. And sure enough, he comes out and was the 4th highest passing grade quarterback for the week. They were moving the ball. They just made stupid mistakes that you can't make, that nobody can make. The Jets, nobody else can go into San Francisco, make 2 critical mistakes and have an unlucky interception and win that game on a night when they're on like they were. So the Jets will watch the tape on this game and actually feel very good about where they are offensively. And then this defense, like, okay, if you think this Jets defense that's been awesome for 2 years under Robert Saleh is going to just look like that every week, I would say that is a lot crazier than me putting the Jets at number 6 in the power rankings. Like, they're going to figure some things out. This was a buzzsaw night when they made some mental mistakes that were just too much to overcome. So that's my explanation. Take it or leave it. I am not going to abandon the Jets after losing a road game in San Francisco under that context. In fact, I think my optimism for Aaron Rodgers and this offensive line looking pretty damn good held up better than anybody should have expected. So this is a team that is getting wide-scale panic and overreactions. Not so much going to happen here. I mean, I would very much bet on them with their upcoming schedule, Titans, Broncos, Patriots, Vikings, to very quickly forget about what happened in San Francisco and actually build off of the success that they did have. And, I think Hassan Reddick also is a big winner in this one because he gained a lot more leverage and maybe they can get Reddick back out there. Because I will say the Jets' defensive line did underwhelm, and that is probably the difference between me dropping them a spot in these power rankings. But still, holding on to that number 6 spot. I know we spent a lot of time on that one, but that's going to be definitely the big talking point, especially coming out of the Deep Dive series and all the people that were upset with that ranking of them in the top 5. But the Baltimore Ravens are going to climb into the top 5, jumping the Jets despite the loss. I don't know if I feel too much different about the Ravens than I did a week ago before that Chiefs game. If you look at my ratings coming out of the Deep Dive Power Rankings series, both the Jets and the Ravens had damn near identical, overall team grades based on my formula, 83.3 and 83.3. The Jets just by, maybe 0.04 got the nod in that one. So the Ravens being closer in their loss are going to get a slight nod here. I think you got some pros and cons from this game. My worries about this offensive line definitely held up. Was not a big Roger Rosengarten fan. Doesn't look like he's going to really have that job after how he looked. And Patrick McCarry stepping in, playing better. The Jordan Mailata project at right guard, I don't think can continue. But on the flip side of that, I will say that this idea that Lamar slimmed down and is going to be more explosive, I think is actually a real thing for this team. I thought Lamar played phenomenal. And I'm not generally like this big Lamar defender. I don't think I'm a Lamar hater either. Some people think I am. But I'm usually not the first person to rush to Lamar's defense. I felt like that was my reaction from this game. He got a lot of crap because he did miss a couple throws down the absolute stretch in that potential game-winning drive scenario. But he was also the only reason they were in that game and had that drive to begin with. And to go back to the losing weight and looking more athletic, if they're going to have more offensive line issues this year, they're going to need this version of Lamar. But, his combination of now looking more like, in my opinion, the old Lamar. Like last year, I had said, I don't know, he looks a little slower and stiffer than what I remember Lamar Jackson looking like. But what Lamar did exhibit last year was this kind of newfound elite trait with this prolific pocket presence to sense the rush, manage the pocket, knowing when to step up, knowing when to get out. You now pair that with a slimmed down, explosive, dynamic Lamar Jackson looking more like his prime athletic form. That's extremely dangerous. And maybe this is a hot take, but I think if you put Lamar's performance against the Chiefs up against like all of his MVP season performances last year, it's got to be up there. So like I thought he looked phenomenal and can counteract some of their offensive worries. And defensively, I thought, they were fine. They were the Ravens defense. So they re-enter the top 5, but they aren't going to make the top tier in these rankings. I think there are a clear 4 in the NFL right now of sort of your Super Bowl front runners. And that does start with the Eagles. I think the exceptional roster talent that this team has was on full display. The Saquon Barkley signing, absolutely worth it. Loved that signing. I kind of predicted him to lead the league in rushing yards this year, and that could very well happen. So fun to see him with an actual offensive line. But the passing game working too. People forget A.J. Brown was not there in that Bucs playoff loss last year. So he quickly reminds people of just how insane A.J. Brown is. And then just having real coordinators here definitely was felt against a very good Packers team. And, Howie Roseman showing his colors too, as Quinyon Mitchell, their rookie draft pick, looked phenomenal. Their kind of sneaky pickup of the offseason, Zach Bond, looks like the best linebacker they've had since Nigel Bradham. He looks awesome. So everything off to a good start for Philadelphia. Definitely deserve to be in this top tier. Even if they are behind my next 3 teams, the Detroit Lions are going to fall down a spot. Look, I'm not jumping ship on my pick of them to go to the Super Bowl. I still feel very good about this Lions team, but I just think the Niners looked a little bit better. But for the Lions, I really don't want to say anything negative about them because it was a big win. Jared Goff didn't have his best night. I think you expect that to get better based on what he's shown us the last 2 seasons. Maybe some week 1 jitters. We'll see. But, man, the breakout of Jameson Williams is just so huge for this team. They need that explosive, take the top off type of threat here. And, again, them falling a spot here, it is literally nothing to do with me feeling worse about the Lions. It's just the Niners look so freaking good, man. They just did. Such a well-oiled machine on both sides of the ball. They know the stakes for this season. This window is closing, and they wasted no time in week 1. Shanahan pushing all the buttons at the right time. Brock Purdy looks phenomenal. He continues to kind of climb my, internal quarterback rankings. We'll see kind of where he is compared to coming into the year and in a few weeks when I do my first, quarterback tier maker video. But he's just so efficient, so good out of structure. Jordan Mason stepping up, because of course Jordan Mason stepped up and had like one of the best running back performances in a long time. Dude looked like Marshawn Lynch on Monday night. And then the defense flying around doing their thing. Fred Warner punching balls out. Jake Moody continuing to look good in year 2 here. The special teams, like everything coming together for the Niners. A true force to reckon with. And man, I even thought about putting the Niners over the Chiefs at number 1. Not quite going to go there. I think the Chiefs looked really freaking good too. And that was without Hollywood Brown, who could be back this week, who I have big expectations for. You had Xavier Worthy looking great in his first game. Rashee Rice looks like their version of Deebo Samuel. So, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. I'm not going to take them out of number 1, even if the Niners arguably were the most impressive team coming out of the first week of the season. So there are your week 2 NFL power rankings. This one got a little bit longer. I don't know if it's going to be this long every single week. We still have a lot to talk about, though. So, again, everybody go check out the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. It will be here on this channel here tomorrow. So, just make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your comments down below. Where did I go right? Where did I go wrong? What are your week 1 reactions and overreactions? I want to hear it all in the comments. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys later. Peace out.